Hi, I'm Malessa.
And I'm Candice.
Welcome back to The Build Up, presented by Brown Harris Stevens, where we discuss the secrets of building wealth through real estate.
Today, we're going to be discussing the fascinating shift that we're seeing in the housing market, the rise of new builds. And then we're going to be heading over to record a live episode at the Real Deal's New York City Real Estate Forum with our special guest, Sam Charney. And we're going to be talking about how to develop and the need for quality housing. You know, we're always just kind of staying top of mind on what's coming out in the news and the headlines. And one thing that really jumped out to me was that according to a recent study, 33.4% of the single-family homes available for sale in the first quarter of this year were actually new builds, and that is double what it was pre-pandemic.
That's quite interesting. But according to Robert Deitz, the chief economist of the National Association of Home Builders, he points out that they're still producing 1 million new builds per year. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they're producing more.
Yeah, they're not necessarily producing more. It's just that the resale market has shrunk so much recently. And so now there's a closer proportion between what's available for resale and now new builds.
Exactly. But this can be a good opportunity for those who are looking now in the market, right? Because with the new build, you have a little bit more opportunity. So you find opportunity in chaos, right? So when you're buying a new building, you're dealing with sponsors and developers. So you find more opportunities in terms of price cuts. You can really get creative with the rate buy down. They have more incentives. So it's really an opportunity. I see it as.
Yeah, we've seen that a lot where like an individual seller may not have the same flexibility that a potential developer can to be negotiable. So that's also been very alluring, besides the fact that obviously new is typically what someone would prefer, but also they're finding that they can get more creative with the negotiations, like you said. Mm-hmm. And we read that 2/3 of the home builders right now are selling with some type of concession. So that's actually a lot, you know, more than what we've seen before.
Right. And the opportunity going back to that right now is that usually the new builds is historically higher in price. But, you know, now that we have more new builds, we're seeing a lot more concessions and things like that. And pre-pandemic, they were actually 40% higher than resale. And now we've seen it at 4%.
Whoa. So it's pretty much become an equal playing field between pricing of resale and pricing of new developments. So that's actually almost never happened before, right? There's always been such a stark premium, like you said, you know, anywhere between 20 to 40% over the resale value for new, but now it's not the case. And, you know, that's really, like you said, opened up a whole new wave of opportunities for buyers. But the one thing to keep in mind when we're talking about the percentage of new builds that are out there is that most of them aren't completed yet. You know, most are still under construction, or it's even just a vacant lot at this point in time. The construction hasn't even started. So only 10% of the homes that are under this new build category are actually completed and ready for move-in. So that's something to be aware of.
Exactly. And so because of that, you have to be a lot more strategic and patient, right? Because if you're now entering and there are going to be a lot more opportunities, but you have to be a little bit more, again, patient in terms of, you know, negotiation and looking at the pricing and see, okay, do I need it today? Do I have a need to really move in now? Or can I be a little bit more patient and probably negotiate a better deal? If it's coming to market longer, then you perhaps have a little bit more negotiation power.
Yeah. The other thing that, in addition, when you're analyzing, you know, what's your timeline like? Can you wait a little bit longer for one of these that hasn't been completed? The other thing to think about is like the space that you need, right? Since 2021, we've been seeing that home builders are constructing smaller homes. This has helped with affordability costs, both on the builder side with rising construction costs and interest rates and all of that, but also to then make more affordable homes for the end buyer, because all sides are feeling this right now with interest rates, high inflation. It's just a lot of pressure right now for affordability. So right now, people are reassessing, can they live in a little bit of a smaller space to make not only the purchase of the home more affordable for them, but also just the ongoing maintenance, utility expenses, all of that comes down when the size and the footprint comes down.
Exactly. And also the construction costs, right? The smaller the home, the smaller the construction costs. Also, it's important to reevaluate your geographic locations. Perhaps you can move out a little bit more, commute a little bit longer, but you also have a more affordable option.
Yeah. And I think like when we talk about costs in general, obviously there's certain places you shouldn't cut costs. Like when you're talking about building, you want to know that you worked with a builder who really invested a lot into the structure, the infrastructure as well, like all of your major systems, plumbing, electric, HVAC. You don't want to cut costs in those areas, but where there is an opportunity to make homes more affordable is in the finishes. We obviously all strive for like the most luxurious finishes, but those are the areas where you can perhaps downgrade a bit to make things more affordable, but not necessarily compromise the quality of the overall build and the construction and the infrastructure, which is really what is the core of the home. That's what's really important, to make sure that the costs weren't cut on.
I agree. And I think one last thing to consider as well is, future costs, right? A lot of people don't think about that with new builds, but especially considering real estate taxes. Usually, if the home is not completed within the first year, it's usually lower, right? Because it's just going on estimates. But after the first year, then the taxes are going to be reassessed, and it's most definitely going to be higher. So that's something that you want to do your due diligence, see what county you're living in, what state, city, whatever it is. Just try to look into that and do your research to ensure that you're better equipped for, and you put that in your budget for that rising property cost, which ultimately is going to be a higher monthly payment.
Yeah, the one area that new builds obviously help with rising costs is just the fact that they tend to be built with more sustainable products. They tend to be more energy efficient than these like older homes and such. So that also can help save a little bit of the cost over the long term as well. So you're not spending as much for your energy bills and consumption and all of that. So that is one of the benefits of new builds.
Absolutely. I think this is a great opportunity right now, especially now that it's equal playing field. It's not so much of a price difference for new builds. So it does create an opportunity to go in there, especially with the price cuts, especially with the negotiability with the sponsors and the incentives. All of that really helps. But of course, with every opportunity, you also have to have your eyes peeled for the unique challenges that comes with it.
Definitely. And we're going to be speaking with a real estate developer right after this, so we can talk more about housing and building quality housing to meet the needs for our buyers and our renters today.
Especially in this really low inventory environment.
Yeah. So looking forward to that.
Definitely.
Today, we have a very special episode and a very special guest. We are recording live from the Real Deals New York City Real Estate Forum. Our guest today is a prominent player in the New York City real estate scene. He's developing over 2 million square feet of mixed-use real estate in Gowanus, Williamsburg, and Long Island City. Sam, welcome to the Build Up.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. It's nice to be here.
Same here.
Thank you for being here with us today. And as Candice said, we're live here at the Real Deal. So of course, we're here to talk about real estate, but before we get into that, we want to talk a little bit about your art background. So talk to us about art and your love for it and how you segue from art to real estate.
Sure. So growing up in New York City, surrounded by culture everywhere, right? My mom was a musician, so she would take me to like Avery Fisher Hall and barge music over in Dumbo on the water, and you just do all these crazy things on the weekend. I grew up near the Met. The Guggenheim, and there were you could go to the Met for free if you were a New Yorker, and then the Guggenheim would have free evenings. So I would just go and take advantage of as much of the cultural vibrancy of New York as I could as a kid growing up in the city. Learned to start appreciating the street art scene in my teen years, and just again getting into like the grit and the artistic nature of what was going on in New York around me. And started collecting when I saved up a little bit of money in my 20s, continue that into my 30s. And when I started developing on my own, starting Charney Companies, now almost 11 years ago, decided that rather than put the generic tile or stone that my architect was speccing in my lobbies, that I thought it would be a lot more interesting to create a gallery type space for my residents. So started reaching out to a lot of local artists that I had relationships with and said, would you be interested in doing a lobby piece for me? And amazingly, so many artists were interested in getting works commissioned by them. It goes back in my mind to art and real estate having this very special relationship all the way back to like the Medicis, right? And like the Rome and Florence and just Michelangelo. And so we commissioned art from local Brooklyn and Queens artists and whether it's in our lobbies or murals on the walls of our building. We've done stuff with Tom Fruin, with Swoon, with Fail, some of the really most prominent, incredible artists today. And we have something really, really special cooked up for the Gowanus, but I can't share quite yet. But all I can say is it's going to be a beacon on the canal and on the waterfront in the neighborhood.
Wow. I can't wait to hear and see what that's about.
Yeah.
We'll have to come take a tour once it's ready.
Definitely.
But we love to see that you're investing in art personally and also in the projects that you build. You're taking a sense of pride in your projects and really bringing a new level of lifestyle and quality of life to your buildings through the art. So that's amazing to see because not many developers put the same prioritization on art. But changing gears a little bit, there's such a need for housing in New York City, as we all know. And the new 485X tax incentive just came out and it's impacting a lot of developers. The goal is obviously to stimulate development and to provide some very needed housing for our city. How is this program affecting projects in your pipeline? And it may be too soon to say, but do you feel this program will have the positive benefit that the legislators hoped it would have?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a really exciting time because for 2 years we had nothing when the 421A expired.
Yes.
So I think they did the legislature and the governor did some really smart things here. The devil's in the details. So, as HPD and city council work out what the language of the legislation looks like, I think we're going to find out if this is as successful as we're hoping it will be. But I think just to touch on your earlier point before I get to 485X, we desperately need housing, right? We need it so badly, but we need good housing. We don't need shitty housing. So so many developers are just happy to throw up a styrofoam building with stucco on it and call it a day. Use porcelain tile all over the walls and just say people are going to live here no matter what. We really you have a responsibility as a developer, not only fiduciary responsibility to your investors, but a responsibility to really the entire city that you're building in. You're creating something that's going to be around for ideally 100 years, if not longer. So you're affecting the urban experience for everyone around you on a daily basis. So it's super important, whether it's the inside of your building for your residents or the exterior and the architecture and the facade that you're building, that it resonates with the city, that it fits in culturally, aesthetically with what the vibe of the community you're building in is. So super important to us. We always care about, the quality and the aesthetics of the project we're building. Now, on the 485X, the first thing they did was extend the 421A construction completion deadline, which was super important because you had a ton of projects that were financed and vested under the old program. If the economics did not stay the same for those projects, and 485X has different economics, those projects would never have gotten built because they were fully financed, right? Investors expected X returns. Banks were lending on underwriting of the old program. So that was essential to say construction completion deadline can now go to 2031. So important. And I think what you're going to see is instantly they opened the faucet for the lending market when they did that. And it's great. All of our projects right now, all of our multifamily stuff in Gowanus, which has permanent, deeply affordable units within mixed income and high income buildings, are all under the extension of the 421A program.
That's good. We
We are looking at 485X right now, and we're analyzing it and trying to understand what is it going to do to the development market in New York. You have to have a tax abatement to build rental housing. It is essential. It does not work because real estate taxes, as we know, make up the majority of the budget in New York City because they're so high. And so you can't underwrite a deal without an abatement. So glad to see that there's an abatement. There are prevailing wage requirements for large and very large projects, which we're still studying. So we're not sure. We have our subcontractors working on their payroll to show us what this effectively does. It's a total project cost. So we're working through that right now. The other interesting thing about 485X is they put in an affordable condo component. So we had been meeting with council members, assembly members, senators over the past 2 to 3 years talking about 421A and really lobbying to get a new program so that everyone understood how the private sector looks at how we build in the public sector looks at how the private sector builds in New York City. And as we were talking to everybody, what we learned was people wanted affordable for sale product. They said, my community, I don't like seeing my community get gentrified. I don't like seeing people who have lived here forever go because they're priced out. So why can't we build affordable condo? And the answer was always because it doesn't work. Now, the new 485X has set an assessed value at $89 per foot per apartment. So ideally, that allows you to build affordable condos successfully in New York. The question is, as a developer who's building condo products, how do I know if I'm going to qualify? And this is where the details come in, because ultimately I have to put out an offering plan. That offering plan is going to have estimated taxes in it. And the end user, the purchaser, is going to show that to their lender so the lender can underwrite them and they can get a mortgage. Now, assessments don't happen until you get a TCO.
Right.
So, and you need to be putting apartments in contract way before TCO, right? You need to be ready to close. So they have not addressed that yet.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happens. I think, if I were at Department of Finance and HPD, I would be thinking about a pre-approval system so that developers can go and say, here's my project. This is the neighborhood. This is the finishes we're going to be putting in. These are the views. What are my assessed values going to look like? Because I need to understand if I qualify for the program or not. The other thing is they have not been clear about if an entire building qualifies or nothing, or if you can partially qualify a building. So like in my mind, there's going to be a lot of neighborhoods where you're going to see assessed values that could be around $90 a foot. They could be 100, they could be 80, but they're going to be around that number. So the question then becomes, can I get like lower floor units that will qualify and higher floor units that won't, and like view units that won't, and non-view units that will? And I think they need to really seriously look at that, because the whole goal of 485X in my mind in any tax abatement program is to create mixed income, diverse socioeconomic buildings. That's what we want. That's what makes New York fun and dynamic and interesting. It's the New York I grew up in, New York I want to continue to live in. And so if you can't qualify partially, then you're going to be stuck with either, lower income buildings or higher income buildings. And to me, that's just like the antithesis of what we should be building if we're trying to create this utopian urban environment.
Yeah, it's like the need for the middle class, right? In the economy. When you eliminate the middle class, you're no longer what we are striving for here in this country. So
Completely.
the same thing with the housing is having a mix of incomes that can afford, different levels of real estate. So we agree completely. And it's kind of like the Opportunity Zone program when it came out. There were so many gray areas. So this program is brand new. So I'm sure they're going to start to answer a lot of these questions so that there's more clarity around it. But let's move into your projects in Gowanus. You mentioned before you're planning something very special for one of them, and you have 3 there, I believe, right?
Yes.
And so what is it about Gowanus that has made you so bullish on this market?
Yeah. So Gowanus was always this hole in the donut, so to speak. You had downtown Brooklyn, Carroll Gardens and Cobble Hill, and Park Slope, all surrounding this defunct industrial neighborhood. And, Gowanus had been pitched as redevelopment ever since the 1970s. And back then it was pitched as a industrial business zone. Let's revitalize industry in New York City, which back then was probably the right idea. Never really happened. And then it kind of sat fallow for a while. And the city under, Mayor Bloomberg's leadership, Brad Lander's leadership, Eric Adams' leadership, ultimately said, let's rezone this neighborhood, but let's do it the right way. And it's really, in my mind, the example of how public ULURPs and rezoning should work. created tremendous value without displacing many people. It provided for cleanup of an environmental superfund, mandatory. It provided for mandatory inclusionary housing. So you have to build deeply affordable and permanently affordable units. And then there's also components where you have Gowanus mixed use space for light industrial manufacturing, maker space, retail, and artist space. So it
You
really,
love the artist
it was,
space.
yeah, completely. I mean, I like diverse, vibrant communities. Like, I don't like living or working or having fun in neighborhoods that are super homogenous. So it's really nice that this rezoning was able to do that. And developers were able to look at it and say, I can make this work. Like, the economics can work here. All of a sudden, landowners, they got value that they had been holding for years. Developers came in, bought the land, paid what they felt was the right value for the land. And then they're able to do construction costs at a normal rate to make these projects, financially sustainable. So it's great.
Excited for you because we do want to come visit those projects, right? It's 3 rental buildings.
Absolutely, yes.
So you're building quality product like we talked about earlier, but with also the design component with the art. So we're excited to see that. We love to see different buildings. Like you said, there are a lot of different inventory that we've seen and they're all cookie cutter. You walk out and you forget about it. So you're making a mark there. So we're excited. And you've had a lot of experience so far. You know what you're doing. You know what you're talking about. So what is the one mistake that you think or lesson learned that made you a better developer today?
It's a great question. And I hate to call it a mistake because I try to live the same way today as I did when I made that mistake. So I wouldn't necessarily say I learned from it because I don't think it was a mistake. Sorry, let me take that back. I absolutely learned from it. I learned how to be a much calmer, go with the flow kind of person. And in the absolutely manic world of real estate development, tremendous highs and really low lows, I learned how to take everything in stride from this experience. But the first project I ever did when I left my former company, Two Trees, was a building called the Jackson in Long Island City.
We know it.
Right. 50 unit condo building. I took all the money I had saved and some friends and family money, put down a deposit on a piece of land. I paid the owner full price. I went to contract for exactly what he was asking, but I negotiated a 1-year close with him, which is really unheard of. Typically people want to close within 60, 90 days, 120 days. I said, look, I'm just starting my own firm. I'm young. I don't know where I'm getting my debt from. I don't know where I'm getting my equity from. So I need this amount of runway, but I'll pay you full price. He said, fine. We agreed. We had a deal. Fast forward 2 months. This is 2013, 2014. Land values just took off in Long Island City. And so now I have this piece of land under contract that is worth, maybe $100 a foot more than what I'm in contract for.
Yeah.
And he then says to me, well, I'm not selling it to you anymore. Yeah. Right. And I didn't even know that was possible. I was so naive. I was like, what are you not selling to me? We have a contract. Right. You have to sell to me. And so I then started speaking to my attorneys and understood that I had to sue him for specific performance, and that if we did not, that potentially this lawsuit could go a year, maybe 2 years.
Yeah.
And then it could go to the appeals court, which could go another year or 2 years. Now, this is my first project. All my equity's tied up. Yeah. I'm not making any money, no income coming in whatsoever. I legitimately had an evening where I said to my wife, we might end up pitching a tent in my father's living room with our daughter, and that's going to be where we live because we maybe have 2 months left to kind of figure it out here. And it was really a tough, trying time in my life. And ultimately, we ended up settling with him. So the extortionist won, and we paid him additional monies on top of what we were in contract for. And it was all fine. We ultimately were able to close. And so the lesson was, learn how to take things in stride. I think, in retrospect, I would say that my honesty is what got us into that problem because I was so honest and about what I needed. But I operate that way today too. So I would not change what I did.
I think it's just more to be cautious, right? But all's well that ends well.
All's well that ends well. And to be honest with you, like, you just learn now that like real estate development deals take a long time. And like one day could be, one day could be amazing. And the next day could be the worst, right? Like one day you can close on a deal and you can crush it. And then the next day, Department of Building shows up and shuts you down. So like you have no idea what's going to happen, but
that's the exciting part too. That's why we do it.
It's exciting. It's always problem solving, right?
Very dynamic. We love what we do, and so do you. But
I think we have time for one more question,
Okay.
and we'll let you go. And it's maybe a tough one, but you've obviously accomplished so much in your career already, and I'm sure there's a lot more that you want to do and achieve. What is the lasting impact you hope to have, not only on the industry, but the communities that you build in?
It's a great question. Ultimately, the lasting impact that I want to have and our firm wants to have is to build as much affordable housing in New York City as possible.
Wow.
So, we're building all across the spectrum right now. And a lot of that is dictated by the political environment. So we were building mixed income buildings under the old 421A. When that expired, we had to build condo. So we're building condo products. We're also doing some student housing in Manhattan right now on the Upper West Side. But for me, the ultimate goal is to be able to build as much affordable housing as possible with real social services built in, so that we're not just housing people, but we're giving people the right tools to succeed. Because in my mind, New York is the best place on earth to live. It's the most exciting, the most dynamic place to live. But it is that way because of the melting pot that it's always been. And we need to continue that. So for me, being able to, continue building as much housing as possible would be the most exciting thing to do.
That gave me goosebumps because we're obviously like diehard New York City fans. And so hearing other people that share that passion for the city and want to preserve its amazing qualities makes us feel good. It continues our job here to continue to sell homes to people who want to live in this great city. So thank you so much, Sam, for joining us today. What an amazing conversation. And
thank you guys so much. I really appreciate
definitely
it.
making an impact in New York City. And we love that. We love to be aligned with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We want to thank Sam again for joining us today and for such an insightful conversation about his portfolio, the way that he approaches building, and also how he's really meeting a need for quality inventory in the New York City market.
Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone you think it might be helpful. Until next time.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute tax, legal, or investment advice.
For specific recommendations, please consult with your financial, legal, or tax professional.